Hey everyone, welcome to Zonan Canada. I'm your host, Jesse Betteridge. So in this episode, I'm going to be interviewing Raj Ramayya. Listeners of the show are most likely to know Raj for his past musical collaborations with Yoko Kanno. You were, of course, the vocalist for Ask DNA on the recently re-released Cowboy Bebop movie, Knockin' on Heaven's Door. And you also did Strangers from Wolf's Rain. Those are two of the most well-known things, but your musical career goes much deeper than that, especially in Japan. He's one half of the band The Beautiful Losers, and a producer for Strawberry Hill Music, which is a audio post-production studio in LA, correct?
Oh, in San Francisco, actually.
San Francisco. Yeah, so in San Francisco. I had the state right. And of course, since this podcast is about anime's relationship with Canada and Canadian media, and the main reason I asked Raj to come on the show today is because he is from Saskatchewan.
Yeah, correct.
What was your musical background or sort of entertainment background before you left Saskatchewan?
Well, I was a university student when I left Saskatchewan, and I was just playing in bands. I wasn't quite really planning on making a career out of music, but went to Japan at that time. There was a lot of opportunities in the music industry, so I started getting a lot of work in Japan as a musician, and it kind of very quickly morphed into a career.
What drove you to Japan? Was it the opportunities in the industry, or is it just something that sort of evolved naturally from heading out that way?
It kind of evolved naturally from heading out that way. I was planning to go to Japan just for a year and work and save some money and go traveling around Southeast Asia and really sort of see the world from Japan. I had some friends out there, but when I arrived, I was really pleasantly surprised that there's a very vibrant music scene going on in Japan. There weren't a lot of foreigners in Japan that were singers and songwriters. It was mostly foreigners who were playing backup instruments like keyboards, guitar, or bass in bands supporting Japanese artists. So I was a bit unusual, and I was as I mentioned, pleasantly surprised that there's a lot of opportunities for me at that time to write songs with people and sing on their projects. So I quickly got involved with a lot of different people in the indie underground music scene, and then we had some hits. Actually, with songs I'd co-written with people, and things took off rather quickly, a lot quicker than I thought. And I ended up working with a lot of interesting artists in Japan, and I was invited back over and over again by artists to be a guest songwriter or guest singer. And it just kept on going, and it just never stopped for 10 years. So it was a very good situation.
And which time, what time period was this at this point?
This was like the mid 90s. Mm-hmm. At that time in Japan, it was kind of the peak of the music industry in Japan. The Japanese were like really into Brit pop and the American grunge scene, and music in general in Japan was a big business. You could put out an album independently at that time and sell 50,000 copies, and like easily. Everybody was buying music, and it was just music. Everything centered around music, really. It was a time when music was big, and it was a really big, deep, vibrant industry that could support a lot of bands, and a lot of musicians could make a living at the time. So it was special.
Yeah, well, when you look at Japan, even now, it's one of the few markets where people still buy physical music all the time, like Tower Records still going strong in Japan. So it says a lot that it was bigger for independent artists back then. Do you think that but you think that the indie scene has sort of declined in Japan since then?
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, in terms of actual physical sales, yes. But in terms of creating content, I think the Japanese are still creating a ton of content, and nowadays Japanese bands are reaching out to the rest of the world, and they're touring in Asia, and they're coming once in a while to the US through conventions. So I still think that there's a lot going on. It's just the business end of it has changed. People are, like in the U.S., they're looking for another way to make a living from music. And as you know, sales are not the same as they used to be. So people are finding other ways to sustain themselves with music via traveling, touring, and selling merchandise, etc.
And at this time, sorry, you were between Japan and Saskatchewan, or were you at different places in Canada or the U.S.?
Well, I really wasn't. I was coming back to Saskatchewan to visit family in the summers, but I was like, for the most part in Japan. There was just so much going on that it's mind blowing. There was so much going on that I didn't feel the need to go to the U.S. I felt like a big fish in a small pond there. So so it was like it was a great time to be there. It was just very serendipitous that I was there at that time, and everything was coming to Japan. It wasn't like you need to leave Japan. All the big bands were coming there. Everybody was excited and interested in the scene in Japan. So we really didn't need to go anywhere at that time. It was just very, how should I say, very well set up for music. There were so many and still are so many live venues in Japan. And really a love, a passion for music, and with Japanese people in general.
And was this mainly in Tokyo you were in, or were you in different cities?
I was mainly based out of Tokyo, but we depending on the project, I would end up going to other cities to perform. But Tokyo was really the hub of music, and all the studios and production companies were there. So, like I said, my phone was always ringing, and there's always something interesting going on. It's like when you have one hit, everybody wants a piece of your magic. And they don't know what it is about you that works, but for some reason you resonate. And I was extremely fortunate that way. I remember going to Tower Records and looking at the Billboard Top 100 and having 4 or 5 songs in there. And I was going like, wow, this is incredible. I was like, wow, I've got like 4 or 5 songs, and I can see the CDs on the wall, and go like I had 4 or 5 songs to the Billboard Top 100. It was just a dream, and then it just kept on going, like I said, and it was always mind blowing.
And you were involved with different bands at this point. Was it mainly vocals you were doing for a lot of those songs?
I was writing songs also. I was singing with people. I would be they call it top liner. I would sometimes sing on top of music that some band create melodies for them and write lyrics. And sometimes I'd be writing a song for them. So basically I was singing and songwriting and coaching other people, like some visual K and pop artists. Also I would do all the vocals for them, and then they'd mimic me when they went to the studio and recorded their songs. So I go in, I work with people like Smath or Hyde, and I would actually sit down and write a song on the guitar with their band, and then the visual K artist would come in and duplicate what I did. And then he would write his own lyrics, or I would write the lyrics, or I would write the song, and then they would add lyrics to it. So it's a combination of different things.
And for when you were writing lyrics, were these mainly English lyrics you were writing, or Japanese lyrics?
Well, if I was writing the lyrics, it'd be English. Mm-hmm. If they were writing the lyrics, it'd be obviously Japanese. So it kind of depended on the scenario. So it went back and forth. It was always different, So it was very interesting because one day I'd be working on a jazz fusion album with some. The next day I'd be doing visual K, or something, or I did a lot of TV commercials. I wrote and sang on a lot of TV commercials, which is a real bread and butter kind of gig.
Yeah.
Yeah, Japanese commercials were like at the time I was getting a lot of attention. So I was singing and writing TV commercials in Japan, which was very lucrative. And up until maybe 8-9 years ago, was still good business. So I was doing a lot of that, and then I would once in a while do a game, or once in a while do an anime or something, or do a movie soundtrack. So I was always doing something like that, but the TV commercials were like the main sort of, like stable kind of money earner. So, but the TV commercials in Japan are not like here. People in Japan are fans of TV commercials.
Yeah.
Like, they buy the albums.
TV commercials have their own stables of characters that you follow from week to week.
Exactly.
I'm one of those people who obsessively watches like compilations of Japanese commercials on YouTube, which you can.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, I can recommend if you wanna see some. I can recommend you some links. With the Japanese advertising industry, is it kind of in the same ecosystem as the greater music industry, or is it sort of its own isolated weird little thing? Can you tell us a little bit about how it works?
Well, I actually, believe it or not, met Yoko Kanno through TV commercials.
Oh, okay.
Because people are quote unquote anime or game artists or composers or whatever they are. But, if there's an anime, or you get 1 or 2 anime soundtracks a year, you can't really live doing just that.
Oh, of course
you
not,
need
no.
to be doing a lot. Right. Yeah. So, as I mentioned, the kind of like, I don't know if we're call it a secret, but the reality was that a lot of famous artists were writing or composing music for TV commercials, because it's a steady job where it keeps turning over every season, and they need more and more content. So I met Yoko Kanno because I came in one day to sing on some TV commercial for some kids TV commercial for a kids product, kind of frog. I don't remember what it was, and she heard me sing, and she's like, "Oh, this guy is interesting." And then one of her A&R people ran into me at a club. It was like a cafe where I was singing songs that I'd written at a cafe, and so she'd heard about me from Yoko for the TV commercial, and hunted me down, came out to see me. So the TV commercials really led to a lot of other opportunities, and you release a TV commercial and suddenly millions of people are hearing you, every day. So it was a really good opportunity to get heard, and Yoko was actually, that's what she did. That was actually her living. The anime was a side thing.
Yeah.
For TV commercials, yeah.
Yeah, and I believe your first collaboration with Yoko Kanno, I think it was Turn A Gundam, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Had you worked on, and this would have been the first time you worked on an anime. You hadn't worked, anime isn't an area you worked in before you met Kanno?
I'd never heard of anime before I met Yoko. I started working with her on anime, and it was interesting because it was a new field for me, and I didn't really understand the much about games or anime at that time, because it wasn't a big thing at that time, really. It was the very beginning of a new wave of a new genre of music, basically. I was fortunate to get involved so early with it and be involved with some classic anime. I mean, I'm on a lot of her songs actually as a co-writer and a singer. I think that in a lot of that material didn't even get released in the West. A lot of it was still domestic, So, but the ones that people know are, the Wolfsbane, Cowboy, Bebop, Gundam, and stuff like that. But there's definitely a lot of other stuff out there that, I worked on.
Lots of deep cuts and the OSTs and other stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you kind of describe working with Yoko Kanno? I know from Turn A Gundam, I think you probably did a few other projects, but of course the big one that came up was doing the vocals for Ask DNA and the Cowboy Bebop movie. But I guess in your working relationship with Kanno was sort of not too different from other collaborations you had done in different fields?
Yeah, basically, I as I mentioned, I got to work with a lot of interesting people on a regular basis. It was like literally every week, like I guess it's hard to really get it, but literally my phone was always ringing, and there was always somebody who wanted to work. Because once you have a hit, everybody wants to, like I said, work with you. And we were having multiple kinds of hits at the time. And so there was just multiple people who'd be calling me up, and they'd hear about me from somebody else, and they'd say, can you come write a song with me? Or can you sing on this? Or can you write lyrics for that? And so the whole singer-songwriter thing quickly turned into a very good living for me very quickly. And my friends at home couldn't believe it, that I could make a living as a singer-songwriter. It was like, what? But it was true. And at the time it was, you go through those phases whenever you're kind of the item, right? The hot item, and everybody wants to work with you. And so, yeah, I hope I didn't derail that.
Oh no,
that's yeah. So that's, it was a very good situation, put it that way.
When you work with Kanno, like you worked as a lyricist and as a vocalist, but were you typically like doing both on some projects, or like the lyricists and vocalists kind of hands-on with the recording process, or was everything kind of more segmented? Or I don't know what you can really say about just that kind of the hands-on process with how she does things.
Well, she basically had me, a lot of other people come on as songwriters, more so than we would sing and write lyrics, but we were also like writing songs with her, demos, and we'd go back and forth with at that time, like we wouldn't share files, we'd actually record on physical CDs, right? So at that time we were actually writing songs with her. Once in a while I'd get featured on a song as a singer, but in the meantime, we were just exchanging songs, because I'd write parts on a guitar or piano and then send it back to her. So we'd come up with melodies and different things. So I think that a lot of Japanese artists would like you to believe that you're just writing, lyrics or singing or something, but the reality is that we were writing songs with them on different projects, for sure. Me and other people would be actually writing the songs. So because if you listen to it, they don't really have that background of pop rock, so they would never naturally sort of, come up with those kinds of melodies. These are melodies that are foreign melodies, and that's why they would want foreign songwriters to collaborate with. But of course, you're establishing a brand, so you don't want to go running around telling people like somebody else is writing my song with me. It's, you're promoting that person. So it's become a bit of a weird thing over the years, because there's a lot, nowadays they've accepted that, and they're cool to work with a foreign songwriter and said like, yeah, we worked with a foreign songwriter. But at that time in the 90s, they really wanted to establish themselves, their brand, the Japanese brand of music. And you'd be almost hidden from view. Or you'd be in a back room writing songs or something. It was just part of the process, but, I mean, in a positive way. It was just, people they were establishing their sound. They didn't want, people running around telling everybody that, they're collaborating with somebody else. Mm-hmm. So, especially
around the late 90s and early 2000s, you were doing a lot of work in video games, specifically for Sega. Did you kind of fall into that the same way that you fell into doing some anime stuff?
Yeah, I was doing a lot of songs for video games, a lot of theme songs. And, it was the same thing, like like I said, once you sort of everybody gets to know you, you get the phone calls, right? And people are always like, again, oh, that game, that song turned out really well for that game. I'd like you to sing on my game. Could you, do that on my game too, so that my game could become successful? So it's like, suddenly everyone has expectations of, what's involved with working with you, and you get the opportunity, the door opens, you get to do stuff, right? So,
yeah. And
it was great.
Yeah. And most importantly, you were a voice actor on some games, notably Shenmue 2. Is that correct?
Yeah, also Resident Evil. I'm the voice of Bruce McGivern on Resident Evil 2. The voice acting gigs came because I was actually in the studio writing theme songs
Yeah.
with the composer and singing, and I just happened to be there. And at that time, voice acting was just sort of becoming one of those things that everybody wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I just happened
It was a
to
new
be in the
thing in
studio.
games at the time. So.
And yeah, so I just, like I said, I just happened to be in the right place at the right time, and people were, hey, why don't you just go ahead and voice the character as well, since you're here. That was kind of, so I felt very fortunate again to be in the right place at the time. It seems to be my life in general.
Any
Just yeah.
Yeah. Any roles that you got to play that stuck out to you or were particularly memorable?
There were a lot. At one point, I was just getting singing and voice acting on a lot of productions. I guess the first ones I got was on that Resident Evil, and then after that, it was like I had my own TV show every week on NHK, a couple of TV shows, and those TV shows were popular animated shows, and I was like the voice of different characters, and I would sing songs. I had about three different TV shows going on, usually about 2 or 3, where I'd be like the voice of an animated character, and then I'd write songs for the character and sing. So, but that's all domestic stuff. So like, people in outside Japan never really heard that stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Were they like children's shows or like variety shows?
They're children's shows, and some variety shows, more like shows that were directed at mainstream kids shows, because the kids shows were big money. They were like the Japanese version of Disney.
Yeah.
On NHK and things like that. So because again, that kind of stuff really was a big business for them.
So you basically did work directly for NHK. Was there how did working for like a public broadcaster compare to some of the other work you were doing?
Well, it was steady. I mean, if you're going to try and make a living in the entertainment industry, you definitely want to have something that's steady. And so a lot of artists, like I said, would write TV commercials and work something like NHK, because NHK would have regular stuff happening for you. And you'll be really surprised by how many professional musicians in Japan actually have a side gig writing music for NHK or TV Tokyo or something like that. This is how you sort of you create a life for yourself, as opposed to a song here and there or a soundtrack here and there. You're working for steady things like NHK or some other company that has regular work that feeds you a steady supply of work. So yeah, that's kind of how most musicians were making a living, working for NHK or TV Tokyo, writing theme songs, scores, and things like that.
Yeah, I see. That makes sense. And that kind of paints a picture of what you were doing, what you've been doing in Japan. Have you done any professional work in Canada? And if so, how does that compare to, working in Japan or other countries?
Yeah, I have. I was lucky. My brother is a film producer in Canada, so he actually hired me while I was living in Japan to write music for his soundtracks for some CBC shows in Canada. So I ended up writing for made-for-TV movies and documentaries and TV shows in Canada through him, and then other people heard about me. And I'm actually at the Vancouver International Film Festival next month doing a panel on indies. I'm still scoring indie movies in Canada.
Oh, wow.
I
might have to go check that out.
So I'm doing... Every year or two, I'll get a feature film, but I'll get like TV shows. I'm just finishing a 16-part documentary on cowboy culture, believe it or not, in Saskatchewan or in Saskatchewan, Alberta. And then I scored a movie this year that featured the cast from Silicon Valley, the TV show.
Okay.
And so I'm doing indie movies, TV shows as well, and games. I'm just wrapping up a big game for China, and some animation projects. So yeah, it's a variety of different things. There just isn't a fandom around indie movies and those types of things.
Well, I mean, that's kind of the point. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, right.
yeah. I know that recently, I think probably the most recent anime project you worked on was Made in Abyss. You collaborated with Kevin Penkin on the soundtrack, and specifically
Yeah.
you did the vocals for it's called an insert song, but it was actually used as the opening for the first and final episodes of the show, Underground River Fall. Could you talk about your experience working with Kevin Penkin and working on Made in Abyss?
Yeah, it was a great experience. He's actually coming to the studio today. He's back here in the U.S. and we're gonna start work. We were actually working on a couple of animes, one anime together, and this game we've been working on. And yeah, it was a good experience. I'd never actually met him. We just did record everything online. Yeah, it was great. I was just sort of kind of interested in getting back into the anime world, and it just the opportunity came up to work with him, and so yeah, he was a great guy, and we'd never met before that, but now we're good friends and we hang out, and he's working on projects coming back to the U.S. and working with me on different things. Yeah. We're kind of looking at what's going to happen next, and I'm excited because we might be working again in the anime space, and definitely work in the game space. We have a few more games coming up, so it's it's cool. Very
I know
interesting.
with Made in Abyss, I remember when that first episode aired. Apparently, they forgot to credit you guys for Underground River Full when it was used in the first episode. Or at least I heard something about that.
Yeah, this is typical, which is something we warned them about not to do that, and then again they did it. So it's I don't know why that happens, but it happens, fairly often.
It's not like it was just like a small song that appeared incidentally in the episode. It was used as the opening in that episode. In my opinion, that's a great song. I think it actually should have been. I think it should have been used as the actual opening for the series. But there's politics on that. That was a huge oversight, and that was a really big production too. So. And getting a second season, so I hope we hear you guys back in the second season. So Raj, before we wrap up, can you tell us about just some of your other work, with the Beautiful Losers and what you do with Strawberry Hill Records?
Well, it's Strawberry Hill Music. We're a music production company, and yeah. Well, we do a lot of games, animation, soundtracks, voiceover, sound design. We do a lot of animated TV commercials and a variety of different things, for visual media, music and audio for visual media. So that's what we do in general. We're always looking for something, the next interesting project. So we've got a ton of things going on, and yeah, we work with artists at conventions, producing events and things like that, as well as doing OSTs and things like that. So, a wide variety of things for sure.
Also, you're part of a group, the Beautiful Losers, as well?
Oh, yeah. The Beautiful Losers, we're just finishing up a new album, and we're hoping to put that album out this spring. So, I've been working on that as well. And so I have my personal projects, but I'm also writing songs for TV shows here in the U.S. For all sorts of different TV shows and movies as well. A lot of theme songs. So it's a lot of the Beautiful Losers material usually goes on once we record it. It usually ends up becoming a part of a TV show or a TV commercial or some sort of visual media. The songs go to that. So it's like a personal project where I write the songs that I like, and then I place them on different TV shows as opposed to people calling me up and say, I want this. Can you make that for me? So it's kind of the opposite situation where I indulge myself.
Yeah, but you get to come at it from both angles though. So That's good for you.
Yeah, it is. It's fun.
Raj, I know you do performances at anime conventions now and again. We're recording this in September of 2018. Anything lined up that folks might be able to find you at?
I'm at a few conventions coming up. I think they'll have to come to my website and check it out. Anime Midwest, I think, in Chicago. And Midwest, a few other places. I'm at a few different conventions. I haven't got my schedule solidified for 2019, but definitely next summer I'm at several conventions. And I'm looking forward to that. So it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I remember seeing you perform at Anime Evolution. It was about, I think, 8 or 9 years ago now, but it was a great show. For sure. Okay, so, Raj, I think that pretty much wraps us up.
That's great. Thanks for having me today. I appreciate it.
Where can people find you online, Raj?
You can join me at, on Facebook or Twitter at Raj Ramayya, on RAJRAMAYYA on Facebook or on Twitter or Instagram. And come to my website, rajramayya.com, and check out my music production company, Strawberry Hill Music. And you can see our reel on the top page and all the cool people we work with.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Raj. And thanks for tuning into Zon in Canada. Everyone, you can reach me on Twitter at jbetteridge or email zonincanada@gmail.com. If you enjoyed this interview, by the time this episode is out, if you go to zonin.ca, I'm going to have my previous interviews listed on the sidebar if you want to listen to me talk to PJ Phil Guerrero, Sugar from the Zone, or the former YTV head of programming, John Rooney, Lisa Patillo from Seven Seas Entertainment. I'm going to have all those listed on my website. You can check them out. The theme song for this show is by Ultraclystron and can be found on his album Packet Flood, and you can find that at ultraclystron.com. Please subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play Music, or your podcast app of choice, and leave a rating or review if you have a chance. It really helps with the visibility for this show, especially on iTunes. If you know anyone who might like this show, please recommend it to them. See you again!